Well, I work for an international confederation of European beet growers, which is basically an umbrella organization that consists of national and regional beet growers associations from all over Europe. The biggest producers of sugar beet in the European Union would be, at this stage, France, Germany and Poland. And there's another big producer, a member of our organization, or an observer member of our association rather, that is Turkey, and they produce quite a lot of it as well, between 1.5 million and 2 million tons of sugar. The sugar regime in Europe has undergone a very, very thorough reform, which is coming towards its end, but basically from 2005, before the reform started, there were almost 200 sugar factories operating in the European Union. Now, 3 years later, 3.5 to 4 years later, there's only about 100, 105, 106, maybe 110 left. So there's been quite a decrease. There's been 5 countries that have stopped producing sugar from beet altogether: Ireland, Slovenia, Latvia, Portugal, and Bulgaria. So, and most other countries either reduce their production by, say, between 45 and 50%, some more, like Italy, by almost 70%, and other countries by, say, between 10 and 20%. But every country has reduced its production as a result of this reform. The political goal was to reduce production in Europe by 6 million tons. It's a political decision made by the European Commission in order to have a better point of view, to have a better argument position for at negotiations at WTO. The idea is you give a little bit on agriculture and on sugar in order to obtain, if you like, brownie points in other fields. Finland, if I remember correctly, went from 2 sugar factories to 1, and its production decreased by, I think, just under 50%. They're just below 50%. A lot of people at the beginning of the reform thought that Finland would be one of the countries which would give up almost immediately. Because of its northern geographic position, it doesn't have the same, for example, yield potential as, for example, France or Germany. I think in a very, very good year, for example, sugar yield would still be say below 10 tons of sugar a hectare on an average, whereas in France 10 tons of sugar per hectare would be considered a below average year. They are now at 12, approaching 13 tons. I think it happened because there was a very strong will on the part of the farmers, I think it's MTK, the Farmers Association, and its representatives. I can't remember the name of the president at the moment, but certainly in CB, at the CB meetings, it's the 2 representatives, Antti Lavonen and Pekka Minimäki, always made it very clear that there was a political will on the part of the sugar beet growers to stay. And I think they also were fortunate in that they had they did very good political work with their national administration, because in Ireland there was a strong political will from the Irish growers, but the administration was not so sympathetic. Yeah. Well, Pekka has been, I would say, the best ambassador the Finnish beet growers have ever had, certainly in the time I've been in CB, which dates since 1992. So that's the best part of 16 to 17 years. He's been very, and having said that, he's also been there probably during the most difficult period for Finland and Finnish beet growing. He was always there, and he was always interested in what was happening in other countries to see how were growers going about, approaching this challenge that was coming ahead with the reform. He was always making exchanges with other farmers' representatives, including, and that was especially important, with farmers' representatives from countries such as Sweden and Denmark and Lithuania, where the sugar company, in this case Danisco, with different names. In Finland it was OI, in Denmark it was AD, and I think in Sweden it was AS, and in Germany it was GmbH. So, but he made sure that he knew how the processor, in this case Danisco, was thinking in order to anticipate events. He's very direct. When he doesn't sort of beat around the bush. When he wants to know something, he says, "I would like to know. If you don't know, do you know somebody who knows?" He's willing to actually put quite an effort into finding things out, into learning about how the situation could possibly be improved in his country by looking at the examples in other countries. He looks for information, and he doesn't just sort of wait for it to come, sit back and wait. He actively goes and looks for it. And this way, I think he's quite successful in obtaining information and in exchanging views with people.
What kind of character does this kind of work require?
You have to be, I think, on the one hand, outgoing, very open and honest in why you're looking for things. It's one thing looking for information. It's quite another when people ask you, well, why do you want to know? I mean, you know, you have to be honest in why you're looking for it. And I think that's the effective thing. At the same time, you have to be able to listen to what people tell you, even if some of the things they tell you may not be what you want to hear. Because sometimes some of the solutions that are proposed in certain countries may not, for example, fit in with the situation in Finland because the political circumstances are not the same. But I think Pekka is a prime example for somebody who wants to know and who will take all the information on board, including information which at first glance may not suit him or may be considered, you know, irrelevant in a Finnish context.
Now you know that Pekka is running for the parliament, so
yes.
What would be his capacities from your side, from your point of view, that he would be a good candidate for Finland?
I think Pekka has something which probably a lot of members of parliament, not just at European level, but probably even at national levels, don't have or forget rather quickly, is being in touch with what's happening on the ground. In his specific case, being in touch with farmers and their needs and concerns. He's a farmer himself, and so he knows he's got, if you like, on the ground experience and knowledge of what's going on, and especially of what are the challenges awaiting agriculture and the upstream and downstream industries. It's I mean, he has an outgoing character. He has a very friendly personality. He's easy in his contact with people. He goes towards people. He also does not he doesn't shut himself off to people coming towards him, because it's an exchange. So he may be approached by people who don't necessarily have his view, but I'm quite convinced he will be prepared to listen to them. But one thing you need in any bureaucratic institution, in anything where there's a lot of committee meetings and subcommittee meetings and specialized committee meetings which have different interests and sometimes contrasting interests, I think the one thing you need is patience and perseverance, and I think he has both. Now, I realize in being 1 out of 13 in a parliament of just over 700 is not going to be easy, especially if the 13 are probably from different political parties. So, but I think he has as good a chance as anyone to be elected. I think agriculture remains extremely important. Very often, I think policymakers ignore this at their peril. It's not so long ago that there was actually a food price crisis, not a food crisis as such, but prices went up very high. There was enough food, but there were quite a lot of people who were not able to afford to buy the food at the new price. At the moment we tend to have problems the other way around in Europe, because recently there was problems in Greece and Bulgaria because of low agricultural prices. It doesn't mean that the food prices were getting lower for the final consumer. That is always the problem. When commodity prices increase, there's a big problem in that end prices for the consumers increase. However, when there's a decrease in, for example, the price of sugar or the price of coffee or the price of cocoa beans, you never see a decrease in the cup of sugar, in the kilogram of sugar you buy, or let alone in the kilogram of chocolate or in your sweets you buy, or in your cup of coffee in a cafe. So I think we ignore policymakers and trade negotiators. They ignore agriculture at their peril. I think you always have to keep a minimum security of supply at regional or even at national level. It's very dangerous to say, well, food is being produced much cheaper, 20,000 miles further on the other side of the Atlantic. So let's not produce any more food. Let's just do services. I don't think that's a realistic option. It works on paper in economics, but it doesn't work in reality.
So Finland should be quite selfish in that sense about its agriculture.
I think every country in Europe, from Finland down to even Cyprus and even Luxembourg, who has a very small dairy sector, I would recommend that they keep it. As variety is wealth, and I think it's a very stupid idea to put all your eggs in one basket.